Hey guys, thanks so much for listening to the Students Podcast. I hope you enjoy this conversation you're about to hear between me and my good friend, Marcus Lee, the founder of the St. Joseph Foundation and the Dad Dilemma Podcast. I hope it enriches you and encourages you as you listen.
All right, let's just jump right into content then. So can you tell me a little bit about, like, why did you start the Dad Dilemma? Like, what started the idea for the podcast? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so the podcast is, the Dad Dilemma is really like a branch of the nonprofit that I started, the St. Joseph Foundation. And it really just came from seeing the impact that people come up to me like, hey, thank you so much for like sharing your story from when I made the documentary. And so I was sort of like, okay, there is something about having a shared brokenness with someone that, like, whether we would have ever connected before, like, we can sit down and talk for 2 hours because we have a shared trauma.
Yeah.
And so that was really where the podcast came into, of just like, okay, I want to give other people a platform to share their story. And it's been amazing, the people I've been able to have on and be like, I mean, I kind of know you, but some of it is like, oh, I had no idea that this was a part of your story.
Right.
And then what's been really cool is because the criteria is so small. It's like, hey, do you have like father wounds? Which is everybody to some extent. Cool, then come be on my show. Let's talk for, 30 minutes to an hour. And then that's the extent of it. But just giving people a place to be able to share and be like, hey, here's what I've experienced. Here's what I've walked through. Here's what father wounds have, how they've manifested themselves in my life.
That's really cool.
And sort of navigating that just as a whole.
So tell me, you mentioned the documentary, so tell us a little bit about the documentary, how that got started. I mean, there's not many people that you meet and they're like, yeah, I've made a movie that's actually premiered, and like you can still go watch it. I watched it the other night. It was phenomenal.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, man. So it came, I had been doing, and all of this, like, it feels rehearsed to say, but because I've been talking about it for 3 years now. April will be 3 years since I started the process of it.
So cool.
But I had gotten into comedy and was doing stand-up and was asked to do...
No way.
Oh, yeah.
That's legit.
Yeah. I am a man of many endeavors. I wouldn't say many towns, but I try a lot of things.
It's always been on my heart to try comedy. I love stand-up. I love reading books about comedy.
Oh, yeah.
Like How to Write Funny by David Neal, that Irish comedian. So that's awesome.
I think everybody in their life... I think every man in the world owes it to himself to be punched in the face really hard once and to bomb on stage. Because it raises your threshold for the amount of embarrassment you're willing to put up with. If you've never had a whole room of people let you know, hey, we don't want you to be here anymore. I know you just came here to make us laugh. You're not doing a good enough job of bringing me joy. I'm going to boo you now.
Oh my gosh.
Nothing like it.
So you've had that happen.
Oh. Not a lot of times, but enough times to
And have you had some really great nights where people were just cracking up?
Yeah, I actually. This is so off tangent, and I never talk about this.
Let's talk about this for a minute. Is it okay? Can we take a little rabbit trail?
Yeah, this is so funny. So when I was 24, I won Comedy Works New Talent Tuesday.
Let's go.
And yeah, got to spend a night with Sinbad, which was such a low chain celebrity. But for me, growing up, Good Burger was my favorite movie in the world. And he's the principal in Good Burger. And I was like, I'm actually getting to meet Sinbad. Somebody most people would not be excited about. I told some people, and they're like, who is that? It's just I guess, yeah, there's not a lot of... You had to be a very...
That's my wife's favorite movie, by the way.
That's amazing. Yeah, I had to issue my family a formal apology a few years ago of I watched it back as an adult and was like, guys, I'm sorry. The amount of times I've played this, rewound it, and immediately started it again.
Come on.
But yeah, so I'd done stand-up for a little bit, and it was really fun. I loved it. Auditioned for the Groundlings, and was like, yep, I'm going to go and be a writer on SNL, and had these I had this whole thing planned out, and was coming back from I forget what it was. It was an in-person pitch for a commercial for a brand that is not a sponsor of this show, so I'm not going to shout them out because they didn't give me the job. But I'd come back from that and was feeling pretty bummed out because I was like, oh, I've got this. I had a really good 8 months or whatever, so on top of the world. And then it was like, yeah, no, it's not that good. We don't like it that much. And I was like, bring me out here for it.
Like, crush me.
But I was on the way back, and I was listening to this podcast called Making Movies is Hard, because I'd gotten into like some short films and stuff like that. And they were talking about like, the characters. People really love movies with characters that they can see themselves as. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, I really want to make a film. But I'd seen enough people that were at my level in the industry, which is below the ground, that were like, yeah, I did a GoFundMe and I managed to raise $600 for this project. It's going to cost me $40. And I'm like, okay, so here's what I'm gathering from what I'm seeing. People don't care if you want to make an action movie if no one's in it that they've heard of.
Yeah.
Most people aren't interested in short films unless you are also somebody that makes short films. That's why there's a billion like stop motion animation videos on YouTube,
right,
but not on Netflix. It's like, yeah, no, I'll watch it if it's free, but I don't want to pay for that.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, what can I do that could get made? And just looking at budget, and I was like, all right. The cheapest number that I saw was, you can make a documentary for like $12,000. And I was like, whew, okay, so I'm going to need like $11,400 to get this started. But I was like, okay, I have a story. I have a story that I feel like is worth telling. And I was like, I have been talking about doing this for so long. I was like, oh, one day I'm going to go find my dad. And had a lot of like wrestling with forgiveness and stuff like that. Yeah. Of a few years prior to that. Of just really coming to terms and feeling like, okay, I'm never going to meet this guy anyways. I need to forgive him so that I can be like a happier, healthier version of me.
Yeah. What was that process like for you? Like navigating your feelings of not knowing your dad, not growing up with him, knowing that he's out there somewhere, but he's not reached out to you. And how did you feel? Like, how did you get to the point of forgiveness from that place of knowing he's still out there?
So it came from a very like random, but I think kind of honest Google search. I knew his first, middle, last name and a job that he had like 20 years before. And I searched, I think it was 32 pages of Google images for everybody with his name that came up alongside the word Phoenix. I had even gotten more broad than that. And it was one of those, this was in 2013, I think. I don't even know what spurred it. There was just something in me. Oh, I think it might have been Father's Day, and I was just like feeling down on myself. But I was like, I wonder if I can just find a picture of him. And it was like scrolling and scrolling, like 7.5, 8 hours, just looking at images. And it's kind of like if you're scrolling through Facebook,
right,
it doesn't take long for you to see like, if you've been tagged in a photo, like you can be facing the other way and you're like, oh, that's me. I would know that jacket and blah, blah, blah. It felt the same way. Like I didn't have a second guess at all. I was like, oh, that's like an old version of me. But you can never be too sure.
Yeah.
And Ever the comedian. So I screenshot the picture and without any accompanying text, just send it to my mom. And when she called me immediately and was screaming and cussing at me, just like, what the H, where did you find this, blah, blah, blah. I was like, all right, so that's him. Yeah. But I think there was a part of it that for me was just like an honest search of like, I just want to know what he looks like.
Yeah.
And then seeing him, even just a photo, so that's what I had for the last 7 years or leading up to it, the previous like 5 or 6. Was just a photo of him. Didn't know what year it was from, because when I met him, I was like, you don't even look like the person in this picture.
Right.
But some of it for me was seeking and just being like, okay, it was a realization of like, I need to admit to myself that I'm not okay.
Yeah.
And I got some bitterness in me towards you. It's sort of almost like a misplaced motivation. I think a lot of any amount of success that I have had in my life or a lot of achievements or endeavors has been a misguided motivation of, oh, I'm going to prove I can do it without you. Like, you may never reach out to me, but one day you're going to know who I am because I'm going to be so big and so great. And you're going to be like, oh, I think that guy was my son. It's like, yeah, I did it without you. And having to go from that to realizing, like, oh, I'm doing a bunch of good things, but spitefully, and, like, I'm doing good things, like, almost to somebody, if that makes sense. But, yeah, so the realization of it was the first thing, because I, as a teenager, I've been like, hey, how's not having a dad affect me? Like, oh, not at all. I'm crushing it. I'm doing it without him. I'm making it, like, because I hadn't allowed myself to really realize, like, hey, dude, you are very not okay, and you don't even know it.
That's a lot of self-awareness for a teenager. You know what I mean? Like, most teenagers aren't that self-aware to realize, like, oh, my motivation is pain, not passion.
Oh,
like,
I wouldn't say I realized that as a teenager. I was probably
started that process.
Yeah, of just like, man, who am I? Because I had said at one point of like, oh yeah, the next time you see me, it'll be because I'm on TV. And I had said that to somebody, like, in passing, and I was like, oh, I don't think you're the person that I feel that way about. I was like, I think this was directed at somebody else. And so I did realize that at, like, 19, 20. And then that's sort of where it stopped. It's just like, oh, there's something wrong in here, whatever. We're going to keep going, and we're going to make it. Which, if you don't define success, you will never find it.
So is that, like, process almost like counseling for you, or have you ever done professional counseling for that? And what has that been like?
Yeah, so that's
a lot of kids go through that, you know. And
yeah, so I was very against it. So, like, I grew up in, like, a small town where, like, the idea of seeing a therapist, it's like, oh, that's what Hollywood actors and crazy people do. Well, I started making friends that did live in Los Angeles. I'm like, yeah, no, I go to therapy every Thursday. And I'm like, oh, but you're not crazy. He's like, yeah, because I go to therapy every Thursday. And so I saw like a clinical psychologist or therapist, I don't know what the title, for 2 years. And it was every Monday, and it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. And it sort of moved from, because if therapy works, you can quit going, but moved from therapy to I meet weekly. Well, not now because of social distancing and you're not allowed to be inside anywhere anymore. But meet with like a life coach, like a mentor. He's on John Maxwell's leadership team. He like wrote the book on leadership. But I'm still just continuing to have basically people smarter than me and further along in their journey, like tell me where I'm messing up and how to fix it. Like that is, I think that was the biggest thing I got out of therapy, is learning to take what he calls the 1,000-mile journey from your head to your heart.
So good.
But yeah, so from that, after like the realization of it was just like being able to actually confront it. And so for me, that step happened, 4.5 years later of like, oh, I think I have some misguided motivations. I need to do something about it, because it's hard, not impossible, but it is harder to forgive somebody if you can't tell them you forgive them.
Yeah.
And I found from doing it, you can think you forgave somebody, but you don't know until you actually see them. And it's like, oh, no, those were just some nice thoughts I used to like to have. Yeah. I have not forgiven you, turns out. But yeah, so that's where the motivation, long circle, that's where the motivation came from for the documentary.
Did the movie help you with that process? Like, do you think you could have done it without the movie, or do you think the movie helped you actually do it? So coming back from that, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna make a movie. That was the 25th of April. On the 28th, I'm sitting in my living room with my roommate, and I always had these ideas like, oh, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this. I'm not a follow-througher. I've got a lot of quit in me. I've never heard that like that. Like,
but
quit him.
Yeah, oh, I'm full quit. But I'm sitting there on the floor, and I'm like, I've got it. This is a heart-touching thing. I'm going to make a documentary about me going to meet my dad. And people are going to help fund it, and I'm going to go on to be a big director. Like, it was still even then of like, this is going to help my career forward. And so I tell him on the 28th, and I was just go, dude, I have the best idea for a movie. And he's like, I bet you do. I'm going to go to work. And he came back like 6 hours later. And then I like kind of re-pitched it to him, and he's like, that's incredible. Like, I had run sheets. I had a 9-10 month timeline. I had a budget. I had everything. So that's the 28th of April. On the 4th of May, I was like, I need to make social media accounts. I need to do everything I can because I know this is compelling enough that if I start telling people about it, hundreds of strangers on the internet are going to hold me accountable to doing this and not stop asking about it till it's done. And I also knew this is the pressure it's going to take for me to actually meet my dad.
There you go.
Because I talked about doing it almost my entire life. And so it was still a sort of like selfish motivation, but also knowing like this is the pressure I need to follow through.
It's awesome.
Yeah. And it's been crazy since then. Like the reception of the film has been great, and just hearing like I've had kids that are in 6th grade write me letters that I'm like, and I knew that's what they were. Their teacher sent them to me. It was like, hey, I had my kids watch your film and they wrote you letters. I didn't open those for probably 3 months because I was like, I do not have the emotional capacity to sit and read these handwritten notes about how my story of fatherlessness affected these 11-year-old kids. So I've experienced that, and I also, not that long ago, had a 64-year-old woman come up to me bawling.
Wow.
Because we showed it at the movies, and she said, my dad walked out in like 1959, and I haven't seen him since, or something like that. Like, she was like 2 years old, and she's like, I was able to forgive him, like just seeing the way that you did, and I was like,
wow,
oh, this is a lot bigger than me.
Yeah.
And so had a pitch meeting at one point with a fairly large production company, and just as the guy was talking to me about it, he's like, do you feel like this is the tipping point for this film, like this is the maximum impact point, or does this feel like a stepping stone, as we were just talking about it? And I was like, 3 weeks ago I thought this was like, oh, this is what I want to do, buy my movie and give me hundreds of thousands of dollars, put it on Netflix for 2 years, give me a holding deal. And I was like, I think I want to be able to keep it and give it to people as often as I can. And he's like, yeah, this feels like a stepping stone. So that led to starting the St. Joseph Foundation, which the whole aim there is just to assist and empower anyone who's been affected by fatherlessness.
That's awesome, man. So what, you started that after the movie,
as
soon as it ended. And what is so how can people get involved with it? Like, is that something that you are looking for, is like partners, or what? How does it work?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like any nonprofit. We've tried to narrow down the things that we actually do, and you can go to that's a movie website, the stjoseph.foundation, to see the site, and it's kind of got a list of stuff we do, but really like focusing on mentoring young boys that are being raised by single moms, because they are 9 times as likely to end up becoming absentee fathers. Wow. So we really target boys from being raised by single moms, and then also those single moms.
Right.
Because as far as like correlations, and I've studied it like a lot, but correlation is not necessarily causation, and I understand that. I have yet to find a greater correlation to crime, poverty, substance abuse, incarceration rates, teen pregnancy, teen suicide, high school dropouts than being from a fatherless home.
Wow. Like,
there is nothing that compares to that. Like, the Venn diagram of men in prison and men from fatherless homes is 2% away from being just one perfect circle.
Wow.
Like, they're what in marketing we call KPIs, key performance indicators, of like, oh, you grew up without a dad? There's a 71% chance that I can bet, you're probably going to drop out of high school.
Wow.
Or, there's a 65% chance that your fatherless daughter ends up pregnant. Like,
so why didn't that happen to you? Tell me what it is. Like, is it your mom?
I think I had a mom who would have died before she would have let any of that happen. And then she would have let me die before anything bad like that would have happened. But I think some of it was for her. She also grew up fatherless.
Okay.
And I think she was very intentional to not repeat some of those same mistakes. And she would always tell, like me and my sister when we were kids, of like, I'm probably not the greatest parent in the world, but I want to be better for you than what I had exemplified to me, and I hope you're better to your kids than you had exemplified to you. And I was like, oh, that's a fair wish. So I think some of her being aware of that, I think more than I even knew, I think she was always looking for like male role models in my life. Because I had somebody ask me like, okay, how have you seen God as a father in your life? And I was like, in like the feel-good spiritual sense, like, I haven't. But when I can look back from 3 years old to today and see all these places where like strong, healthy, present, faithful men were in my life. And sometimes it was just for a season, but almost always like right when I needed it. And so I've seen God as people a lot of the way through my life. And so I think that was a big help for me. I think not every kid that grows up fatherless has the benefit and is just lucky enough to have other strong men in his life that are like, I see where there's a gap here, and I'm going to give what I can to help fill that up. And I think I was probably not the most open to that as a kid. And so I'm sure I could look back and see all these times that I was like, oh, that person was probably trying to like, take that role in my life. And I was so just hell-bent on, no, I'm going to do it on my own.
Yeah.
That it was like the idea of needing help was like, no, come on. Help. What am I, poor? Poor in spirit. Oh, man. But yeah, so I think having a really strong, like, a single stay-at-home full-time working mom, which people are like, I made that comment to somebody on Twitter, and they were like, what do you mean she worked full-time and was a stay-at-home mom? I was like, well, from before I was born until long after I graduated and moved out, she ran a daycare out of our home from like 5 a.m. till 7 p.m. So I was like, yeah, she's a stay-at-home. Like, I got home every day from school and she was there, which wasn't always my favorite thing, but I think she was like, in the best and worst ways, ever present.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a lot for me. And somebody asked me maybe 2 weeks ago, do you think that to be fathered, that has to come from a male figure? And I think I would even change my answer from what I gave from then to now, which is I think that you can learn principles and anything like that from anybody. Jonathan always says, armed with enough humility, you can learn from anyone.
Yeah.
And I think I learned how to be the man that I am today, good or bad, more or less from my mom. So I think those things can be taught.
Yeah.
But I think there is a part in me that missed out of not actually having that modeled and not seeing day in and day out like, hey, here's how you love your wife.
Yeah.
Here's how you love your kids. Here's how you act when it's a mundane Thursday morning and you don't really know what to do. Like, here's how you stay engaged with your family and not just be like, well, I'm just going to go drive around for a bit because I don't know what to do. I'm used to coming home and we eat and then you go to bed. So I would credit most of it to my mom. But yeah, I'd also say, like, man, if you can find a positive male role model, do it.
Yeah. So find a positive male role model. What else would you say to a student that's watching that maybe they don't have their dad at home and they're growing up with, fatherless? What would you say to that student?
I would say, like, recognize that you're not as okay as you think you are. You're not as strong as you think you are. And it's okay. And you're not alone. 23.4 million kids in the U.S., 23.6 million kids in the U.S.
Wow.
will grow up in a fatherless home or without their father like living in the home. So you're not alone, even if it feels like it. And then forgiveness is your best friend.
Yeah.
Somebody told me, and it's the best way I've ever heard it worded, but forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. And that I have carried that with me for years now of like, yeah, I'm going to choose to not hold this against you. I'm going to choose to not hold a grudge. Realize it, forgive as quickly and as authentically as you possibly can.
So good.
Yeah, I think that would be my takeaway
So
if
good.
I was listening to this at 14-year-old me. And I also know 14-year-old me was not listening to this. It's like, nope. One day I'm going to show up on his doorstep and tell him, hey, you owe me this and this and this. And it's like, you think you're angry, and that's fine. You might be. Because it's a lot easier to do things angry than it is afraid. But, if you can get to a point where you feel vulnerable because you have forgiven someone and you're like, oh, I'm not holding anything over you anymore. And now forgiveness turns debt into a gift. And it's like, oh, we're even now. Now I feel a sense of like openness and vulnerability. And it's like, okay, now we can learn what does reconciliation look like.
So what does the next movie look like for you? Is it going to continue in this vein, or do you have something else, another vision on your heart?
Right now, as far as like creative outlets, I'm working on finishing a book.
Awesome.
Yeah.
About your story?
I am writing a book. I don't know. Fun fact, my editor is in the room right now. Working on a book. Can I say the title?
Yeah.
Called How to Meet Your Father for the First Time.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
And it's really like the documentary doesn't dive like too much into my emotions in it,
Right.
because I think I was so in like director producer mode, but then also like, hey, kid meeting his dad for the first time mode, and so scared. I don't think a lot of that emotion that I was feeling comes off on camera because I had not had time to process it.
Right.
Like,
right. How long did it take to process?
So I did it in November of 2017.
Okay.
And I think I rode an adrenaline high until the 24th of May.
Wow.
Of 2019.
Wow.
So, spoilers if you've seen the movie. If you've not, go to searchingforstjoseph.com/movie. But in that last scene, in the last reveal, so you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That was the first time I cried watching it, sitting in the back of the Rialto Theater with 250, 300 people, and just hearing like the air get sucked out of the room. And in that moment, I finally felt relief, like, hey, you did it. You're okay now. And it was the most insane, like, release of adrenaline that I've ever had. So that was a year and a half.
Wow.
But yeah, so working on a book right now is what I'm really wanting to do. And that's a deep dive into, like, here's the emotion specifically from, like, day one of, hey, I think I have this idea that I'm going to make a movie and meet my dad, to getting back on the plane, him texting me, when is your birthday? And realizing, like, oh, we have a lot to catch up on, like, my whole life. So really walking through that, not a ton of stuff even after the film, because there's probably going to be a follow-up to either book or film. But yeah, I think as far as the route of a documentary, I am not certain I have the emotional capacity to go through something like that again.
Yeah. And do you and your dad still have a relationship? You guys still
yeah.
talking?
Yep. He texted me this morning. And it's so funny. It was for the longest time. He would call me and I'd look at my phone and I just let it go to voicemail. And I'd text him back 3 days later. Hey, sorry, I was busy. What's up? And not too long ago, maybe it's because we're all in quarantine and nobody has anything else to do, I was just like, hey, are you doing okay? And like found myself asking, hey, how are you?
Yeah.
And that's a new place. Like, I hung up the phone and realized, like, oh my God, I care about this man. And that was not a thing I'd felt even a month ago. So it's progress every day, but it also like it legitimately gets easier every day. Yeah. To where like when he texts me now, I'm not like, oh no, what is this? Right. It's usually like, oh, okay, text number 81 that I need to respond to today because I'm a bad person. It's like, welcome to the group. Like I actually responded to your text.
That's awesome.
But yeah.
So is that something that's on your, like, is that a dream of yours, is to be a dad then? Or like, what's that? Tell me a little bit about that, like that side of it.
Dude,
looking future forward.
I am beyond excited to be a dad, to ideally not more than 2 children because I'm getting old. But yeah, I for a long time thought, I don't know that I want to get married. I don't know that I want to have kids. I don't want to risk ruining their lives. Wow. With like a 50% chance of you're going to get divorced. So I thought, okay, the least I can do is step back and do no harm. And my attitude has very much shifted over the years to where I'm like, I'm going to be overconfidently, I'm going to assume I'm the greatest dad in the world.
Let's go.
And I can't wait. And you won't be able to tell me any different of like, hey, you shouldn't do that to your kid. I'm like, whatever. I'm the best dad in the world. Now, maybe it's because my bar was set at not existing. But I think having that drive and desire is like what it takes. I know some people are like, yeah, I found out I was going to be a dad. And I was like, I didn't really connect to that kid for like the first year. And I'm like, that's insane to me. Yeah, like I follow so many, and this is so weird because I don't have kids, but I follow so many like baby accounts on Instagram because I just like looking at cute kids because I'm like, not as cute as my kid's going to be. But I think that will be the greatest joy in my life.
I know for me, becoming a dad was the most epic moment of my whole. It's one of those things where you know what you're called to do. Whether it's like for me as a pastor, I know I'm called to pastor people, to serve people. I know I'm called to ministry. I know I'm called to preach. But then it was like this moment where I held my son for the first time, and I was like, oh, I don't care about any of that. Like I literally was like my whole like everything I've always dreamed about, every grand dream I've ever had. I was like, I don't care. I just want to make this kid's dreams come true. Yeah. And it was the coolest moment. And even having a second child, I'm like, oh, it's not going to be the same. Nope, it's the same. Like,
oh, I'm so glad that was the follow-up. It's not going to be the same. And I was right.
But no, it was the same. It's like, I will do anything I can to make these boys' dreams come true. And for me, there is no greater joy. There is nothing I love more than being a dad, than being a husband. And for me, the biggest win in life is seeing them win. And so if I can figure out a way to make that happen, I'm going to do that. If it means sacrificing my dreams to make sure theirs are achieved, then I'm going to make that happen. And I think, bro, just hearing your story, hearing you talk, you're going to be a great dad. And I'm super excited to see that day when it comes. I hope you make a movie about it, and
about like becoming a dad.
Yeah, well,
like
not the
process,
day of, not the process.
Yeah,
but
this is a students podcast, right?
But the rest of
kids,
having kids and growing up with them, I don't know.
Yeah.
But so thanks so much for jumping on the podcast, man. And I hope students, you enjoyed listening, and just hope you guys enjoy checking out more of what he's doing with St. Joseph Foundation, and check out the movie if you haven't seen it, and pretty soon a book. Do you have a timeline for the book?
No, we don't. I started that a year ago, so we'll see. I've written more words than I have read.
There we go. So we're just gonna put TBD.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, thanks so much. See you later.